Hello, I am Nurbek Savitakhunov, and you are watching the news from Kazakhstan. Today marked the conclusion of the trial on the unrest at the Shetpe station. 12 of the suspects were convicted to various terms from a suspended sentence and up to 7 years in prison.
Kazhimurat Auezov received the longest sentence of 7 years in a maximum security prison. Bakhadjan Gabidin and Yerzhan Mambetov were sentenced to 5 years each, and Nurbolot Sabirbayev received a 4-year term. The judge granted amnesty to 7 other citizens and they were released in the courtroom. Another defendant was given a 2-year suspended sentence. The people accused of organizing mass riots, arson, destruction of state property and obstructing police spent around 5 months first in the temporary detention facility of Tuparagan district DIA and then in the Aktau detention center facing several charges. The only evidence against the 3 convicted men was a video which in fact doesn't show anything illegal. Begali Seitmagambet, the attorney of Bakhadjan Gabidin, says that the video contains a soundbite of his client calling for order and asking to stop the bloodshed in Zhanaozen, expressing his solidarity with the rioters in the neighboring town. Supposedly this was enough for the court to convict the men. Taking into account the aggravated circumstances as well as recurrence of crimes, the court finds defendant Auezov guilty and sentences him to 7 years of imprisonment. As per Article 6, Part 2 and Article 13 of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Kazakhstan, the convicted Auezov will serve his sentence in a maximum security correctional facility.
Families of the convicts expressed pain in reaction to the verdict. Women came out of the courtroom with tears in their eyes. Here's their story.
Families of the defendants say their loved ones could not have caused as much damage to the state as they are being tried for. The only company that could really bear losses is Kazakhstan Railways, as its representatives have said the downtime cost over $100,000. Pardoned residents of Shetpe village should now compensate this amount, but the attorneys are willing to appeal and challenge this decision. Former defendants do not agree with the ruling either, as during the 5 months spent in the detention ward, their families have sustained both financial and moral damages. People released in the courtroom and those with suspended sentences rushed to see their families. Some of them were barely holding their emotions after the verdict announcement. There's absolutely no justice. Innocent people were convicted. I'd rather be convicted with them than to be released in such manner. There's no truth, no justice. We all have seen violence as well as tortures. These are all lies. No damage was actually inflicted, and therefore I believe this was staged by the authorities. Nothing has happened really. No looting, no violence. We did not rape women, nor set houses on fire. We are the ones who suffered by protecting our rights, demanding to tell us what's going on in Zhanaozen. I've spent 5 months behind bars. And for what? This is my first day out. I see all 4 trials have been progressing by a special Astana scenario. People in Shetpe have suffered practically in vain.
To recap, residents of the Shetpe station in Mangistau area blocked the railway lines on December 17, 2011, when they heard about the events in the neighboring Zhanaozen. People came to the station with posters demanding to stop the shooting in the oil town and withdraw troops from Zhanaozen. The authorities construed citizens' speech as riots, which resulted in clashes with the police. Allegedly, people set the rail engine on fire, smashed windows of nearby buildings, and looted some of the premises. In retaliation, the police opened fire. According to official data, an employee of the fire station who sided with the crowd was killed, and more than 10 people were injured. The trial on the Shetpe riots began with defendants' objections. 2 of them had no attorneys, and the newly appointed ones were not familiar with case materials. The press was allowed to record what was happening only at the first hearing, and only for 5 minutes. Later, all audio and video recording in the courtroom was prohibited. Police officers were questioned as witnesses during the proceeding. They said at the preliminary investigation that they were given an order to open fire, yet at the courtroom, they testified of only shooting in the air and in self-defense. The defendants claimed they were tortured and threatened with rape. The attorneys also claimed the video footage submitted as evidence by the prosecution is irrelevant to the case. During the arguments of the parties, the prosecutor requested 3 to 9 years in prison for the accused. Observers attending the verdict announcement declared unanimously the custom-made nature of the court ruling. Editor-in-chief of the Gulzhan.org website, Gulzhan Irgaliyeva, considered the trial a political order in its purest form, saying the judgment was made only to appease the victims' families.
Мы же не видим со стороны полицейских, вот так же, которые ходили бы на
As for policemen who are, as they say, walking on crutches in Shetpe, we did not see a single injured officer. Although there are a lot of people who became disabled for life, none of them are policemen. They said that one of the officers' pants were set on fire and another one was hit with a rock, but it's the people that are convicted as a result. I never thought the verdict would be that harsh. I thought they would be released. All of this is done by the will of one person in Astana. The court's verdict will be reconsidered in the future. Those people will become the pride of our history. I say pride because they were the ones who stood up against the bloodshed in Zhanaozen. I think we will be proud of them. The presentation of cases on the trial of policemen has been postponed until Thursday. This was done because of the absence of one of the defense attorneys who had to miss the hearing due to the death of his family member.
Zhanaozen residents who attended the trial on Monday expressed their dissatisfaction with the decision. People are outraged as the hearings are taking place in Aktau and they are forced to travel to the location by taxi every day. After learning about the postponement, Zhanaozen residents decided to attend the hearing with the verdict announcement on the Shetpe riots case. On Friday, the judge announced the break and dismissed the court. Yet on Monday, when people gathered again, we were told that the session was cancelled because someone died. This is done for the sake of only one man. What about many of those killed in Zhanaozen? The trial is held in Aktau, which is quite problematic for us. We came here by taxi. I've put everything on hold, including my job, for the sake of my kid. And this is what I get here.
The Zhanaozen Municipal Court sentenced Tamara Yergazieva to a 2-year suspended sentence. The woman was arrested for spreading leaflets containing threats towards police officers. This was enough for Judge Bakajan Yilmesov to give Yergazieva a conditional sentence on charges of coercion to give false testimonies.
On March 12, leaflets with names of police officers and threats against them were found in the Koktem micro-district. One of the leaflets was addressed to Nuradin Barzhikov, the head of the Zhanaozen DIA, who was a case witness on the riots trial. Tamara Yergazieva was arrested later. The woman admitted she was one of distributing leaflets, although she had no malintent against Barzhikov, only wanting to intimidate the officer to prevent him from giving false testimonies against her husband. Yergazieva also added that while doing so, she was in a state of psychological trauma. She had repeatedly appealed to the city prosecutor's office regarding the health condition of her arrested husband, but never received a reply. This prompted her to take action, the woman says.
The trial of 37 oilmen is nearing its end. The judge announced a 12-day recess, yet the date of sentencing is not yet known. Nevertheless, activists of the party pending registration Algha expressed no doubt about the outcome. During a press conference on Monday, Mikhail Sizov, the chairman of the party's coordinating board, believes that in the end, the Zhanaozen riots will be pinned on the oilmen as well as the party leader Vladimir Kozlov. All participants of the press conference are confident about the custom-made nature of the trial involving Kozlov and Serik Sapargali.
The results of the oil workers' trial will become the evidence base required to charge and put behind bars Vladimir Kozlov and anyone facing similar charges. I want to stress this again. I don't think the verdict will be fair, and when oil workers will be found guilty for organizing mass riots, the results of the process will form the basis for the guilty verdict for Vladimir Kozlov and others. Two politicians, Vladimir Kozlov and Serik Sapargali, will face trial in July. According to Kozlov's wife, Aliya Turuzbekova, the politicians had already been transferred to Mangistau region. The two politicians are charged with incitement of social hatred. In total, there are 18 citizens in Kazakhstan who are facing similar charges.
Well-known theater director Bulat Atabayev assessed the current state of affairs in Kazakhstan, saying, quote, "Where law ends, tyranny begins." End quote. The director published an appeal to Kazakhstan judges on the internet, urging them not to bow to the wishes of the authorities and instead abide by the constitution. Atabayev reminded the public about the Zhanaozen trial, the arrests of those who supported the oil strike in Mangistau and are now accused of inciting social discord, as well as the unjust trials of Mukhtar Jakishev and BTA Bank employees. I appeal to those who think they are untouchable. Your crimes against your own people will not be forgotten. You will not be able to hide behind the orders of your high-ranking patrons. The country will inevitably become democratic, where the concept of the rule of law will regain its original meaning. And when this time comes, you will have to pay for your crimes. We urge you not to be the punishers of your own people. You cannot change the authorities that have appointed you, but you have a choice of not participating in their crimes. I expect good conscience, as I don't have any other way to influence people. Those who will determine the level of guilt of these innocent oil workers. This is my main concern. 37 oil workers, and 11 of them reside in this region of Shetpe. I believe they are innocent. They were simply framed. Roses to the great poet. Russian opposition politician Alexander Batov and human rights defender Lev Ponomarev laid flowers at the monument to Abai in Almaty this weekend. The delegation arrived from Moscow to attend a roundtable discussion. A few hours prior to the debates, it was decided to establish an international committee in defense of political prisoners and persecuted public figures in Kazakhstan. In addition to social activists from Russia and Kazakhstan, the desire to join the committee was expressed by Member of European Parliament Paul Murphy, Bundestag Deputy Andrei Hunko, Irish parliamentarian Joe Higgins, as well as a number of trade union and community leaders of European countries. The organization's work will be coordinated by Lev Ponomarev.
Since we're solving similar issues, we need to share experience and support each other. We know that a customs union along with economic union have been created. The governments and our presidents Nazarbayev, Putin and Lukashenko are sharing experience, and that's what we should be doing, sharing experience and consolidating our efforts. According to Lev Ponomarev, the monument to a Kazakh poet in Moscow and Abai's poetry united the Russian opposition when several protest actions known as Occupy Abai were organized by opposition members in Moscow. The protest camp next to the monument, which was later dispersed by the law enforcement, reminded Alexander Batov, another Russian politician, of the London's Hyde Park. People there followed their own rules and lived in the atmosphere of tolerance and freedom of expression. The community really consolidated despite many varying political views. Russian citizens came to know Abai's works through the monument, but he has gained even more respect, and we can see Moscow residents wearing T-shirts with Abai prints, Occupy Abai signs or other similar messages.
Representatives of civil society in Kazakhstan, Muratbek Kitibayev, Igor Vinyavsky, and Irina Petrushova met with Italian senators in Rome. They spoke about repression against the mass media and political opposition in the country. The fate of the Alga party and its leader Vladimir Kozlov was at the center of attention. Italian parliament is currently discussing the adoption of resolution in defense of the opposition leader, similar to the decision made in relation to the Ukrainian ex-prime minister Yulia Tymoshenko. The meeting also touched upon the issues of corruption in Kazakhstan, familiar to local MPs following the state-owned oil and gas company ENI ending up in a scandal linked to bribery allegations against Timur Kulibayev, the son-in-law of Kazakhstan's president. Currently, Italy is undergoing post-Berlusconi reforms, with the new government seeking to distance itself of the corrupt past. The support of Kazakhstan's opposition is a part of the new policy of the local authorities. The meeting was organized by the Open Dialogue Foundation. After a series of interviews given to K+ by the former Almaty mayor Viktor Khrapunov, the government of Kazakhstan began repressing entrepreneurs to the east of the country for conducting business while he was at the helm. The former official believes that selfish interests of the president's family are at play in the case. More in the next story. On top of their desire for retribution, they began looking for anything to prove that Khrapunov violated the law. The key person here is Dariga Nazarbayeva. She had her own insider in eastern Kazakhstan, whom she included in her party, and who was the ideologist of the idea that eastern Kazakhstan is a rich place that cannot be ignored by Dariga and needs to be in her hands. This means that all related issues should be settled, and then Dariga should establish control over eastern Kazakhstan. The ex-wife of Nursultan Nazarbayev's brother, Mayra Kurmangalieva, made an official statement on the website gulzhan.org, where she refuted the information about her involvement with the purchase of a stake in Kazakhmys Corporation and the lawsuit started against her ex-husband. The former wife of Bolat Nazarbayev also noted that Rahat Aliyev is engaged in spreading rumors. More on the scandal up next.
Mayra Kurmangalieva said in her interview to gulzhan.org that she is trying to stay away from politics. Kurmangalieva remains in friendly relations with her ex-husband. The woman also commented on the controversy involving Bolat Nazarbayev, who has allegedly filed a lawsuit on the Manhattan Supreme Court accusing Mayra and her son Danyar of fraudulently gaining possession of his apartment in the Plaza Hotel building valued $20 million. Kurmangalieva says that, as well as many others, she learned about the supposed scandal from the press. Moreover, during a phone conversation with Bolat Nazarbayev, she found out that he has never filed any suits against her. In fact, Nazarbayev promised to clarify everything soon. On May 20th, K+ made a statement that I, Mayra Kurmangalieva Nazarbayeva, supposedly filed a lawsuit against Kazakhmys Corporation, demanding part of the shares. I want to make an official statement about the matter. I don't own and never had any shares of that corporation, and I never filed any suits against anyone over this issue.
The 6-month-long labor dispute between the ArcelorMittal Temirtau company and its employees resulted in a rally last Saturday. The Karaganda metallurgists and miners are complaining about low salaries and dropping life standards. In response, the employers offer alternative solutions to the problem, but the situation remains in a deadlock for now. More details in the next report.
On Saturday, employees of the metallurgical plant attended the funeral of crane operator Irina Karamurzaeva, who died in a fire accident at the Mittal Aglo shop this past week. Because of that, not everyone took part in the rally in Temirtau. Out of 3,000 registered participants, less than half of them showed up at the site. The Temirtau city administration allowed the labor union members to assemble only after 5 attempts. The rally was allowed to take place at an old park on the outskirts of the city. They should have sent us to the forest to make it even more unbearable. Negotiations on the 30% salary increase for Karaganda miners and metallurgists began in October 2011. According to the labor union members, they have gone through all stages of the peaceful conflict settlement process. During this whole time, people held 2 labor group conferences and the working group of Trilateral Commission. With the participation of the governor, held 4 meetings. Employers presented their counter-offer as a compromise. Currently, we are proposing another deal to perform a full wage indexation, and in addition, if they reach certain output, 265,000 tons per month, there will be an increase in salary by 2.6% as a bonus. It may not seem a lot, but it is actually a fairly large cut for the company in terms of the total payroll. Unfortunately, we had no response from the labor unit yet. The increase with full wage indexation and 2.6% bonus, this concession by the multinational company is seen by the labor union leaders as humiliation. They are fully supported by workers who claim that a small salary is not the only problem. There are also issues with the shortage of necessary human resources and outdated equipment. They give us paint to freshen up the rusted equipment, so when the top officials visit us, everything is shiny and beautiful. Why they are dividing this wage indexation of 7%? I propose them to make 1% wage indexation over a month, and it will be great. So by the end of the year, we'll be fully paid. Starting January 1st, there will be a national indexation of salaries. That means we'll have to wait another year until we receive the salary increase, and by that time, we'll face a whole different inflation rate. The cost saving led to the shortage of human resources, which in turn resulted to doubled and even tripled workloads for each worker. Despite of this, the company doesn't hesitate to say that we didn't earn our wages. Then who is the source of the profit? We should stop these pointless negotiations, and even more so if the employer doesn't want to do anything for its employees, it is time to hit the company's pocket. We have done everything to solve the problem in a civilized way. We demand the fulfillment of our conditions because the patience and hope for the peaceful settlement of the labor dispute has run out. This was stated in the resolution of the rally approved unanimously. Starting today, we will begin collecting employees' signatures on the petition to declare a preventive strike and for later protests in the units where it cannot be held. Union leader of mining and metallurgical industry of Kazakhstan from Astana said that ArcelorMittal Temirtau company will be responsible for all possible outcomes of the labor dispute in the future. The positive outcome of Kazakhmys case convinces other employees of the industry in the effectiveness of spontaneous protests, and therefore they came to rely on this method despite the threat of announced legal sanctions by law enforcement agencies. Now the responsibility for this situation, which is a deadlock, is entirely on your company's leadership hands. People at the rally repeatedly urged each other to solve all labor disputes in a lawful way and resist provocations. It was evident that workers were afraid of everything that could have been mistaken for an attempt of destabilizing the peaceful rally. For example, anyone who wanted to take the floor without prior approval was considered a provocateur and was taken away by the protesters. The rally ended after 2 hours without provocations, although no one can tell whether anyone had such intentions. Now the miners and metallurgists have nothing to do but wait for the decision of their employer.
High-profile arrests are taking place as a result of the Bisoba apartment block collapse in Karaganda. Sergei Grebenshikov, the former deputy mayor of the city, Alexander Vorobyov, the ex-head of the Regional State Architecture and Construction Control Department, as well as Viktor Ivanov, the current head of Saran administration, were all detained in relation to the case. This petition was submitted by criminal investigation authorities, and the resolution was supported by the prosecutor. The gravity of charges serve as grounds for the motion. All three defendants' house arrest was replaced with a 2-month detention. However, the ruling has not been enforced yet, and the defendants charged with abuse of power resulting in grave consequences have the right to appeal the ruling. The state commission which conducted the final inspection of the building was led by the current Saran administrator Viktor Ivanov. According to the investigators, Alexander Vorobyov, the former head of the Regional Office of Architecture and Construction Department, issued a permit to build the residential complex Bisoba on the land plot not suitable for construction. At the same time, Sergei Gribenshikov, the deputy mayor of Karaganda, failed to check the quality of construction and signed the commission papers for apartment blocks 5 and 6, the very buildings deemed dangerous for living, on May 15th. To recap, a 4-entrance apartment block built 3 years ago as part of the Bisoba microdistrict collapsed on April 6, 2012. Luckily, all residents have been timely evacuated. The damage is estimated at $3.7 million, but considering that Karaganda authorities will raise the remaining constructions and replace them with new housing, the total cost to the state budget will approach $13.5 million. On Monday, Kazakh parliament was trying to identify those responsible for the collapse of the Bisoba apartment block complex among MES senior personnel. MP Mukhtar Tenikeyev thanked the minister Vladimir Bashko for his great work, but immediately proposed to hold the MES officials liable for the incident. The emergency minister, however, refused to reprimand his subordinates.
I
don't believe I am to blame, and neither is my staff. First of all, we are not responsible for the quality of construction. At the same time, we have reacted promptly to the situation unfolding in that microdistrict within our area of responsibility. Together with law enforcement officials, we have practically carried out residents in our arms because they were all afraid to leave their apartments. We have done everything we could in that situation. The MPs have also expressed concern about the safety of their fellow citizens to the extent that they propose to make it compulsory for residents to possess personal safety equipment such as gas masks. The Minister of Emergency was quite skeptical about the initiative, saying people are not really keen on insuring their property, let alone buying gas masks. In addition, it was revealed that this vital piece of equipment, according to Mayra Aysina, is not produced in the country. The infamous AK-159/7 prison is back in the spotlight. Families of convicts who served their sentences in the facility have appealed to the general prosecutor of the country on Monday. They claim that the prison staff is brutally beating the inmates, with the latest case of violence taking place 1 month ago. More details about the controversy in the next report.
They're asking for our help. They are at the water pipe station now. We ask for their protection and for the protection of their rights to prevent them from committing suicide. Only desperate people dare to raise their voice in the General Prosecutor's office. These are family members of the prisoners from the AK-159/7 facility located in Dalinka town of the Karaganda region. They claim that their sons and husbands are systematically abused by the prison personnel. Allegedly, the most recent case took place on April 26, 2012. Some prisoners, following warden's orders, tried to sexually abuse their cellmates. The attack managed to repel the assault then, but there's no guarantee that it won't repeat in the future. This is why the prisoners' families brought their claim addressed to the General Prosecutor Askat Daulbayev, asking to deal with the prison's management. We demand to suspend all of them and launch an investigation, followed by the initiation of a criminal case. We have a list of their names. There are at least 10 people there, all prison staff. Ruslan Uzdoyev himself lost his brother in this prison last year. Officially, the AK personnel declared that his death was of natural causes, but they failed to explain where 31 broken bones and multiple bruises came from. The press office of the National Penitentiary System Management did not hear anything about the new tension in Dalinka. I've just talked with the department today. They don't report about any incident this year, so I don't know. That's what I'm told. As I was just informed by their department chief Bizhanov, he said they have nothing to report. AK-159/7 has 11 units or about 900 prisoners. It is a maximum security facility with notorious reputation. In 2010, 12 convicts attempted to self-mutilate by slicing their stomachs open in protest to unbearable conditions. At the same time, showcase suicide attempts happened here quite regularly. In August 2011, several unofficial sources reported about mass beating of prisoners without reasons or mercy, all as part of the so-called prophylactic treatment. The prisoners, closed ones, are convinced this practice is still employed up to this day.
No judicial tyranny. On Monday in Almaty, the Berkut movement participants and residents of Bakay microdistrict organized a protest action. They intend to convey to the public the violations of law in Kazakh courts, as well as cases of inaction of law enforcement officials. This is what they had to say. People who first gathered in the yard of a private house joined the Berkut public movement in hopes to be heard. Every one of them holds a court ruling that they believe is illegal. Some have been victimized by crooks and lost their only shelter. Others are unhappy about soft sentences for murderers of their loved ones. The movement activists have been knocking on doors of all possible authorities for years, but there is no reaction. The courts are violating the law, the people state. But the problem is not incompetence, it's corruption. If they are not paid attention to, the movement leaders threaten to organize another protest. First, legal response during consideration and resolution of court cases. Second, recall of illegal rulings. Third, making dishonest judges and prosecutors responsible under the law. Fourth, initiation of criminal and administrative cases based on our claims and their consideration in court. Fifth, make law enforcement officers criminally liable for failure to act according to law. This is all we have time for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.